What's up, everybody? This is Phil Rogacki.
And I'm Jared Abergina.
You're listening to Two Tree Guys Podcast. What's up, everybody? Phil Rogacki here in Asheville, North Carolina at ArborFest, and doing podcast shows with industry badasses, with manufacturers, talking about products, talking about equipment, hearing their stories. In today's episode, we have Gear Talk. We're going to be talking about performance chainsaw work, port work on saws. And what we're going to be hearing today is from the Nobody Saw Builder Company. But before we get into this and hear about modifying and souping up your saws and creating the max performance you possibly can get out of it, tell you a little bit about the episodes that we have. We also, not only just our gear talk that we're talking about today, we have our mini episodes. And in our mini episodes, we have different stories. We have What's Your Story? We also have, tips from the top, wisdom, informational, educational stuff that these industry badasses shares with us. We have our full-length episodes, which is in our studio in Santa Rosa, California. If you guys are ever out traveling and want to come to one of those, be a part of that podcast, hit us up and we'll get you on the show. And then we have our safety flashes or our safety talks. And what those are we hear about incidents that happen in the industry, and we talk about the controls and what could have been different and how do we make sure that this never happens again. And we put that out there to make our industry safer, to give you guys knowledge. And, this podcast that we started, we don't get paid for it. It's not a business. People aren't sending us money. This is for you guys. Everything we put out there is for you guys that are listening to this right now to make our industry better, to make you better today than you were yesterday. So we have a fee for the show, and that's to share. That's all we ask for this. So this short podcast that you guys are going to have, we're going to talk about the Nobody Saw Builder here, Mr. Jonathon Hensley, and Tanner Bartee. The Bartee. My co-host here, a friend of ours, works for the Academy, and it's been under Jonathon for many years, learning from him. And welcome, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's jump right into this talk and tell us about the Nobody Saw Builder, which is you. You're the nobody.
Now everybody knows who the nobody is. That's what we were trying to keep under wraps.
Well, they're going to know now. Here, you're going to get a lot more orders.
So if anybody makes the correlation with the other podcast and Jonathon Hensley, they'll maybe make the connection. But I got a lot going on, and I'm a maker, as we said in the other podcast. And being a maker, I was exposed to some machinists in my younger years, and just kind of always been enthused with machine work and how engines work and lathes and milling machines and etc.
Down in the basement, right?
Down in the basement. The dungeon, we call it.
The dungeon.
So don't do this for big bucks or trying to make a living off of it. Just really do it to help fellow tree guys out.
And it's fun, I'm sure.
It's fun. I enjoy it.
You're a maker.
I go downstairs and kind of put on some music and tear into a chainsaw and pass some time away. It helps me detox, from everything else that's going on in the world.
It's more of a hobby than a source of income.
Guess you'd say that. More of a hobby. Obviously, can put a lot of hours. I can put 20-some hours in the 500i, so...
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, getting into this. What made you want to start breaking these down and making them perform better?
So coming into the logging industry at a very young age, and the tree industry as well, just the want for a little more power, and then you run across this one guy that's got a ported chainsaw. And it kind of piques your curiosity, and you're like, wow, man, that saw runs way better than my 372. What'd you do to it? Oh, I had such and such poured it. Well, what's that? Oh, they just do some grinding or something in the cylinder. Oh, okay. Well, how does that work? I don't know, man. He just does it. So sparking my curiosity, and I'm thinking, well, I want that. So you start seeking out guys in your local area that do performance chainsaw work or port work. At the time, there was a guy, his name was John Lorden, if I'm pronouncing that right. He worked at our local Husqvarna dealership there in Madison County, North Carolina. And he'd do a little bit of performance work for some loggers. And purchased a few saws from those guys, and I'd go down there to pick his brain. Hey, man, what'd you do to that saw to make it do A, B, or C? I just do this or that. And I'm like, well, how much does it cost to do that? And he's like, well, like $400, for a full till like work saw. And at the time, let's just be honest, I was a young dad and trying to support a family, and $400 was hard to come by. It's just, I couldn't buy a brand new chainsaw and then turn around and give somebody $400 to do some performance work to it. So I just dreamed about having ported chainsaws, and go to these lumberjack competitions, and they've always got some hopped up little steel saw there that cuts like 16,000 RPMs, throwing sawdust like 30 feet behind them. And I'm like, dang, man, I want a saw that does that. So the maker in me understood engines, and I wanted to make it go better, but I had no clue. I had no clue how a two-stroke engine worked. I had no clue how the port timings worked or what numbers goes into it. I didn't know what a squish band was. I didn't know what squish clearance was, compression ratio, laminar flow. I had no idea, any of that stuff. So I started breaking eggs. And I didn't make no omelets with them either because there too many shells in them. Nobody wanted to eat it.
Yeah, a little crunchy.
Yeah, so I started out with, I'd do a muffler mod and I'd get some gains. Well, my saw would be rich, and I'd wind up melting the cylinder down because I didn't know how to tune it. And I'd be back down at the dealership, hey, John, how'd you do this or that? Well, you got to give it a little more fuel. You got to adjust your carburetor because you changed the parameters of how it was operating when you did that muffler mod. Okay, I'm like, well, I did a muffler mod, and it sounds just as good as your saw, but why won't it run any better? He's like, well, because you still got restrictions in the engine. Sound don't make power,
Sound don't make power.
Sound don't make power. I can take a 1986 Chevrolet truck and put a set of glass packs on it, and it's really loud, and there might be a dragster down at Greer Dragway that's making 1,500 horsepower. It's probably not as loud as that, 280 horse 350 Chevrolet engine with glass packs on it. But it don't make as much power.
Makes sense.
So a lot of times guys do muffler mods, and it sounds like it's making power, but it's not making that much. You get small increases because you increase the flow. So that's what I was doing, and I started doing muffler mods, and I'd feel like a 3 or 4% gain, on cut speed and power, torque. And then that led me to breaking into the saws and grinding on them, and not knowing how to chamfer ports correctly. I would wreck pistons and break piston rings, and sometimes I had no clue what a timing wheel was, so I would grind the exhaust roof way too high, and it would scream until you put it in the wood. Then it would fall on its face. And it's like, what am I doing? So a lot of trial and error. And like I say, there just wasn't no access. There was no videos on YouTube, 15, 16 years ago when I started really getting serious about port work. There just wasn't a lot of information. And the guys that knew it, it was top secret. I mean, this is top secret stuff. People think tattoo parlors will break your fingers for sharing information about building tattoo machines or setting them up or whatever. Dude, the saw building industry, the guys that do performance work, they were
There's not many of them, either.
They're very secretive. The ones that they're actually working on saws, they don't share their numbers, they don't share their info.
But your guy at the Husqvarna dealer did.
He did.
Because he liked you. You had a relationship with him.
Had a relationship. Well, he shared just enough to get me where I wanted to be, but he didn't share it all. I like that after a while,
It sounds like some fishermen I know out there.
Exactly. So I guess to the root of it, it was just the want for more power, but couldn't afford it at the time. Didn't have that extra cash flow, and just kept working on them, and got my hands on the two-stroke tuners. If anybody can get their hands on that and are interested in understanding how two-stroke engines work, how to make them perform, getting involved with some people that built dirt bikes, built engines in general, and just trying to collect as much. Like I said in the earlier podcast, I'm a learner. No matter if you're a teacher or not, I'm a good learner, and I'll learn, and I'll perfect that. So taking all the information that I could get from everybody, and then I finally got a hold of a two-stroke tuner's manual and read through the whole thing. I think they're like $500 for a little manual now. That, like, you can get on eBay. These things they're outrageous. They were like $20 off the auto parts store shelf back in the day. Now you can't have one for under $500.
Why's that?
They don't make them anymore, you know. So if you get one, it's a collector's item, absolutely, and people would love to get their hands on it. But going through that two-stroke tuner's manual, I started to understand, hey, this is why. And then just having that maker mindset, you know, understanding itemization of fuel, understanding compression ratio, understanding timing of ports, and how all that engine works in correlation to make power. And then you develop a theory. Anybody that works on two-strokes, they have their own theory. And we could take 10 saw builders, and I'm the least of all. I'm telling you, there's way better builders out there than me. Way better. But you could take 10 of us here at this table today, and everybody would have a different theory about how that saw should be built for max performance. But it boils down to is your theory correct? You know, is your theory relevant? Is your theory going to produce power? So when I talk to people about port work, I kind of nerd out on them, you know, and I go to talking about this and this, and like, why do we polish the exhaust? Why do we texture the intake? Why do we put the transfers where we do? Why do we do all that? It's pretty involved. It's pretty detailed. It's an intricate process. But to get people to understand, you almost have to be that maker. You have to have that mindset to where you can look at that thing with x-ray vision and see where the fuel's going, you know, understanding how to move air-fuel mixture and to make max performance. So
what goes into, let's talk about breaking down one of these saws. And of course, as you said, you know, these port workers, the makers like yourself, they don't share everything. I don't expect you to share all your tricks of the trade.
But just share enough.
All right, share enough to where what goes into kind of the start and finish of having a finished product, and what do you get from the time it starts to the end performance? What's increased?
Gotcha. There's been several dyno runs of some saws, and you could go on YouTube, anybody can, and look at, there's a guy that I really enjoy watching his content. It's Dyno Joe Mods. I encourage anybody to go in there because he actually don't show you the porting process, but he's got some cool videos of saws that have been modified and ported, and he does dyno runs, and then he'll do a dyno of a stock 500i, and then he'll do a dyno run of a ported 500i, and the increase in gains are, you know, some saws he's getting 50% increase. You know, like let's say an Echo 4910. There's some of those saws ported with a set of numbers that I would put in it, taking 40 thousandths off the squish band, moving the exhaust to 102, taking the intake to maybe 75 or 76. And if anybody understands chainsaws, they'll kind of know what I'm talking about. But can take that little 50cc saw to about 5.5 horsepower consistently. Wow. You know, you're getting in the realm of a 50cc saw that's cutting with a 372. That's on par with stock horsepower for a 372. So that's the need. All right, so for me, I'm getting older. I've been doing this for 26 years. And like I say, ported chainsaws at first out of necessity for myself because I wanted that extra power. But now that I'm getting older, I'm trying to build the smaller saw to do what the bigger saw will do, so I'm carrying less weight. My shoulders are not having to deal with that heavy chainsaw. You know, I would much rather take that 2511, which weighs 5 pounds roughly, compared to something that weighs close to 10 pounds, a 201. You know, it's so much easier on my wrists, my elbows. So if I can make that saw cut like a 201, why not? If I can make a 261 cut comparable to 562 Husqvarna, why not? If I can make a 550 XP cut like a 562, that's less weight on grade. That's less hanging off my body in a tree. So for me, it was kind of developed out of necessity. And as I developed my skill set, got to where I was a decent builder, I've developed my own theory about two strokes, what works best. Then guys like Tanner saying, "Hey man, build my saw."
I've got a couple built by them. I mean, they're mean. They're mean.
So
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, they're mean.
Use them every day?
No, I don't.
No.
When I have the chance to use them, when I'm out in production, I definitely do use them.
Yeah.
Every chance I do get, I do use them, break them out, because everyone's like, whoa, what's that?
What's that? Show me.
Can I cut with it? It's like, no, sorry. It's my baby.
Yeah, it's that's kind of how I got into it. Like I say, I don't have no business. I just do it for the good old boys kind of thing. Hey, you want a saw built? Call this guy, and there's a lot of loggers around home that'll hit me up. I got several groups of loggers that'll, hey, I just smoked a 046. What do you want me to send to you? I was like, that's up to you. What do you recommend? I said, get a 500i, man. They're just lightweight. Power to weight ratio is great, and we can squeeze a little more out of it than what you get from the stock saw, and you'll be happy. So I build them up once, send them out. It puts a smile on your face 3 or 4 weeks later when they've been cutting timber for 8 hours a day. 3 or 4 weeks, they send you that emoji with a big smile saying, dude, this saw is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, okay. And then they tell their buddy, like, of course, when they're stumping something or sawing up in the landing, and what's the deal with that saw, man? Oh, I had Jonathon. He built that thing for me. I need his number,
So how many saws are you building per week or month?
I don't know.
Is it turning into a full-time thing?
It could very easily.
Oh man. So
it could very easily turn into
Is that what you truly want, though?
No, I don't know. I feel like if at this point, I could probably go full till chainsaw builder. I could put me up a little building and put all my equipment in there and just do it full time. Because like you said, there's not enough people. And ported saws have met the world, right? Who don't know about ported chainsaws?
Some ideas come to my mind, putting it out there, because it's you got to know somebody to know somebody to get something.
He's down to come to California, man.
Maybe there's a course or a class. Now, how does Steele and Husqvarna feel about what you're doing? And Echo.
This might be TMI, but Walt Rose over here at the Husqvarna booth told me if I'd build him a couple saws, he'd give me a couple.
All right.
That's how they feel about it.
That's fair trade.
That's fair. Walt's like, hey, if you'll do up a 370 or a 572 and a 550 XP for me, I'll hook you up with a saw if that's fair enough for you.
Does Jared want a saw?
Don't know.
I'm sure Jared wants one built.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And a little bit about my build strategy is, there's tons of guys that build chainsaws, and you can find them. You got John's Custom Saws. Because they're on social media, they're easy to find, and they're all going to preach their strategy. And man, whatever works for him, whatever works for Mastermind, whatever works for Rattler Sawworks, they've developed their theory.
What's your theory?
My theory is I think I understand how that engine works, and I'm going to help it work as efficient as it possibly can.
Yeah.
To put that on a whiteboard, I guess we'd have to download that into your brain to understand what I'm saying. I think it could be taught in a class and understood, but we're talking, 3 or 4 days worth of class, and I think you would walk away with an understanding of that's why that guy does that.
Are you going to put on a class out in California for 3-4 days?
Maybe. I'd love to.
That'd be cool. Is anybody else doing that?
Nobody.
Be the first. Be the first.
That's the kind of stuff you get your fingers broke for. All the
you.
chainsaw porters gang up on you because you're making their business. The more guys that know how to port chainsaws, let's be honest, that handful in the U.S. that's doing it, You got rip saws, you got Redbeard. I think Gordy at West Coast Saw used to do some. I like Gordy's stuff. I've seen some of his stuff. It's good. But to me, I'd say this: like most people go crazy with compression. I don't go crazy with compression, and it would take a whole class to understand static compression and why we don't go 240 psi. Where most people would deck a cylinder 40 thousandths, I might deck it 20, 25, 27, 30s a lot of times my max. But I could teach a class in physics on how static compression will hurt you if you go so far, so trying to get our audience to understand that over a microphone would be tough.
So let me ask you over a microphone, let's do this before we end the show here. What's some information or just some tips you can give people running their saws that they can make some small modifications on their own or do to get a better performance on a daily basis?
Small disclaimer, the EPA has some pretty hefty fines for tampering with carburetors or exhaust on chainsaws, so do it at your own risk.
Disclaimer.
Yes.
You heard it.
But a muffler mod, I don't know if you can see that one on that 500i there, helps flow. It helps get some heat out of the cylinder. If we don't want to be the bad guys here, but if we just be totally honest, the EPA puts pretty heavy restrictions on Steel and Husqvarna, and I talk to some of their guys, engineers, all the time, especially Husqvarna. Know quite a few of those guys. Been to the lab several times. Had some influence on how some things were done on the 540T.
Yeah.
That chain brake, honeycomb, that was me. So the rebounding kill switch, that was me.
Cool.
Helped influence that. But a muffler mod, a good air filtration system. But other than that, the exhaust is on one side of the saw, the filtration's on the other. That's the only thing you can modify a stock saw without going in internally. So like if you go to a max flow, you might move more air through the carburetor or fuel injection than a stock air filter. If you mod the exhaust, you're going to be able to evacuate more heat out of the saw, which will increase life. The reason that the exhaust and the air filter is the way it is because the EPA dictates to these guys. They have to pass strenuous emissions. And I would dare say a good ported saw that was running right on the precipice of the lean air fuel mixture probably is not going to emit any more hydrocarbons than a stock saw. But a ported saw not tuned properly would definitely emit more hydrocarbons than a stock saw. So that goes back, the 500Is, the 572s, all these auto-tune saws, they're going to adjust themselves. That auto-tune carburetor is going to compensate for the port work that you do. It's going to operate at max efficiency. Good. We're just running it cooler, more efficiently.
Good. Less glitter.
Less glitter.
Would this be glitter or?
Well, that's a necessity.
That's a necessity.
Yeah, that's to be progressive in our regression. We need to produce faster.
So I'll define glitter right here for this saw. If you take that stock 500i and you throw a bark box on it, that's glitter. That's glitter. It ain't doing nothing for you.
Let's give Gordy a pat on the back. You do get some performance gains with.
I think it's like maybe I think it goes up to 8%. Possibly like 8% gains.
So to give you a little detail on that, if we do a muffler mod, let's base this on circles. Let's say we're pushing air through circles or pipes. If I open a pipe up to 4 inches, then I reduce that pipe down to 2 inches or even an inch, and then I open that pipe back up to 4 inches, I can only move what the 2-inch pipe will carry, right? So if I open up the rear end of the saw and the front end of the saw, it don't change what can get through the restrictions in the engine, the ports. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we can get sound out of the front and some gains, but when we go into the saw and bump up the compression, change the timing numbers, the exhaust timing, the intake timing, and the blow down, which is the transfer timing, when we modify that to fit our theory, every saw builder has a different theory. I'm a long blowdown guy. Research that. Some guys are short blowdown. Some saws, I believe, short blowdown's better. But it all boils down to two-stroke theory, and that's where that two-stroke tuner's handbook would help people understand how long is your transfer tunnel. That'll affect your blowdown phase.
Got it.
Short transfer tunnels don't need a long blowdown phase. A longer tunnels need a longer blowdown phase or a shorter blowdown phase to evacuate all that. So, like I say, that would be a conversation with a whiteboard.
We've got
front of us.
Yeah, we need to do some whiteboarding. We need to do some more classes and courses and education and videos. Like I said, any videos you want to create, you send me, and I'll start posting them for you out there.
Cool.
We can put it out there. But before we hang up here or be done with the show, if somebody wants a port saw, do they contact you, or do they got to go through somebody to get to you?
Yeah.
How would you like that?
I like being hard to get a hold of.
All right. He's hard to get a hold of, guys. Jonathon Hensley. If you want to get a hold of him, you got to know somebody to know somebody to know nobody.
That's
right?
it. That's it.
So find that person out there, reach out to them and see. And if you're worthy enough of them, they may share your name and contact number to get a saw modified. But appreciate you sharing your knowledge and information on Gear Talk. Tanner, thank you for being a co-host.
Hey, man, any time I can be a part of being right beside Johnny, I'm going to be there, man.
Well, guys, listen, if you got something out of the show today, share it. Don't take it and keep it to yourself. Give back. That's the fee for it. And we appreciate you guys listening, always supporting the show. Remember to continue to elevate the standard of the industry through safety, training, and innovation. See you guys next time.
You.
Bye.